Okay, so we're live. Welcome back to the Magic Minds podcast. I am Matt Burke. We're in a different location today. We're not in my gaff and Dottie's not around. I'm in my job. I've got a few things on this evening, so I'm going to get this done today just to free up my evenings. We're in the National Rehabilitation Hospital. This is my office. So as I say, I'm on my lunch break getting this done. The crack, where are we at now? We are at... This will be episode 50. Last week's episode was with Paddy Monaghan. I'm delighted with the feedback. Paddy is a legend, a lovely man, lovely fella, great work, and a fantastic attitude. I'm delighted to have had him on the podcast. You know, I really got loads out of that myself. Just, he's such a... I know people don't like the word inspiration. Some people don't like to be described as that. I just find people's attitude really inspiring. You know, it makes me take stock of my own life, and I can implement some of these skills into my own everyday life and work. So I was delighted to have Paddy on the show. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. On the show today, I have author of the book Optimize Under 35, Daniel Kelly. I love Daniel's work. I follow him on Twitter now the last few years. He's friends with the likes of Jay Campbell and Paul Burgess and those kind of guys in that circle. It's about TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. It's a fantastic book. I've read the book myself twice. I read it before the interview and then I've gone back over again because I just skimmed read it for the interview so I could be able to have the chats with him about it. I'm a huge fan of TRT. I've read maybe this book and then I've read 3 others by Jay Campbell. So I've been looking into this kind of subject the last maybe 3 or 4 years, and I'm a huge advocate for it. But I believe it's the last stop when you talk about health and optimizing your hormones. You know, it's not something that I would recommend somebody to jump in and start exploring straight away. I only had a conversation about this with a family member, and they were saying, do you think I should do it? And I was like, look, you're a million miles away from that. And I wasn't being disrespectful. That's not where you're at right now. Let's give you this analogy. It's like, let's say the TRT is a specific fuel for your car. Yeah, you can put that in your car and you get some benefits, right? But if the fucking wheels of your car are falling off and your wipers don't work and your windows don't go up and down, they're half open, what's the point? You're pissing in the wind, you know? So what I would say to you to do is to go off and get an NCT, see where you're at, start building the other components of your car, and then maybe looking at that. You know, TRT, as I say, is optimizing your hormones and your testosterone. But I mean, there's so much more to health, you know, that you have to look at. And the book covers all that. And our conversation, you know, unearths that kind of stuff. And as I say, I've been interested in a few years. I was thinking of doing myself a couple of years ago. But again, I was like the family member. I was in no position to do that. You know, I was taking antidepressants. My weight was all over the place. I was drinking more than I should have been. My mental health wasn't as good as it is now. I would say now I would be in the optimal position to do something like that. I know I always talk about my ducks in a row, but I have a lot of my ducks in a row, you know. Whether it be mental health, my eating habits, my lifestyle, my drinking, my mental health, my spirituality, my relationships with my family and in my personal life, all those things are now in a good position. You know, if I was to start looking at TRT, now would be a good position. But I genuinely feel, you know, my body doesn't need that right now. I could go off and get tests done and, you know, and start looking down the road. But I don't. I'm really aware of how I feel and how I look, and I don't think that's something that I probably need to do right now. But it will be something that I will explore in the future, and I'll keep an eye on it. I'm very body conscious or body aware, and have an understanding of hormonal and the endocrine system. You know, I'm pretty au fait with that, so I kind of know myself. But it is something that I will look at further down the road. But I would say to anybody that's interested in managing and taking control of their health to have a look at this book, you know, Optimize Under 35. It's fantastic. Or look up Daniel Kelly on Twitter, and the same as Jay Campbell and all these guys. It's well worth a read, and it's worth the investment, taking control of your health. And this is the way to do it, by reading books and getting an understanding and education for yourself, you know, because the health and fitness industry is full of smoke and mirrors and bullshit, and this book unearths that kind of stuff. It gives you facts and information, relevant information. I wouldn't advocate a book unless I really believed, and I really believe it's a good book, and I've read it. And I would always encourage people to take control of your health, because I'm not slagging any doctors off, GPs, but sometimes I just wouldn't be too convinced by their advice. And I have a scientific background, so it's easy for me to go out and manage my own health and look into it. But I'd be reluctant to believe too much of what doctors say sometimes, you know. There are great doctors. I have a great doctor, and Dr. Neville Wilson, but I've encountered other doctors that has given me shoddy and poor advice, you know, when it came to my own health. And that's just my experience. I'm sure there's great doctors out there, but I would encourage everybody to move away from that fear of the white coat, you know, or they know best, and actually go and learn and read and educate yourself, and you will be amazed of what you will unearth, you know. And that's the route I've gone down. Now, I'm not saying I don't go to doctors, I do, but I do my own reading. I'm not like an internet sheriff, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to do that, but there's lots of information out there in books. I used to read books, you know, to get the answer. I don't do it anymore. I read books now to ask better questions, you know. And that's what I would recommend for people. So look, have a listen to the interview and let us know what you think. I was fascinated by the interview. He's a great guy, Daniel. And as I say, his mentor is Jake Campbell, and the likes of Paul Borges and Dr. Kressler. These are huge advocates for TRT and are well knowledge. So he's got great support in his mentoring system, from his mentors. So yeah, as always, a big shout out to Noel Riley and Rooney Media Graphics. Also Carolyn Harvey from ISA Nutrition. Thanks a lot for your support. Big shout out to Kevin Aaron from the team. Give us a bit of a support on iTunes, you know, like, subscribe on YouTube, share with family and friends. It's really important. Stay connected to us on social media. Give us your feedback. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm getting feedback from people I never thought were listening to the show, whether it be people in school, people in the job, people in the jobs, kids are listening to the show. Absolutely blown away by the support, you know, and the feedback. It's deadly to hear that people are listening to it. Wherever you are in the world, mind your little self and always be kind to you, because then you will be a kinder person to the rest of the world, and you will not be a shy bag. So have a great day. See you soon. Bye-bye. Magic Minds podcast. I'm Matt Burke. On the show today, I'm joined by my special guest, Daniel Kelly. Daniel, what's the crack? How are you getting on?
Hey, Matt. Excited to be here. Looking forward to chatting with you, mate.
Yeah, we've been talking back and forth the last while, haven't we, over the last couple of years? I'm really excited to talk to you now.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to have a chat with you today, and thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. I'm delighted. Guys, I've asked Daniel to come on the show. Daniel's the author of the book, and we have it here, Optimize Under 35, and also to talk about men's health, because Daniel has been in this path or this journey the last couple of years now, and he's really have come on leaps and bounds as far as your knowledge and experience and all the stuff that I see you do on Facebook or on Twitter. It's absolutely fantastic, and I think there's a richness there of education that I'd love to bring to our listeners.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, mate, all my education, I mean, some book smarts in there, but most of the stuff that I've learned is just all through first-hand personal experience. So I try to, my philosophy is practice what you preach, right? And I don't tend to talk about anything that I haven't done myself.
Yeah. So come here, give us a little backstory to your journey in health and education. Give us an insight to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So to be honest, that I got through this route as sometimes we all do in life, through a bit of a curved way, so to speak. So when I went to university, I studied business, and when I finished university, I went into finance. Like, it was kind of a traditional route. But to be honest, I found it quite unfulfilling, and it wasn't really something that was for me. But I'd always had a passion for health and fitness. I always trained for a long time, very consistent with it, always into nutrition and how I can optimize all areas of my
Yeah.
health. So it's always fascinated me. And a few years back, as I wrote about in my book, it was around 2015, I noticed that I had like these. I wasn't making any progress in the gym, so I was training my absolute balls off, and I wasn't making any progress. Um, had a lot of anxiety. Didn't really have much of a libido. It's for like a 28-year-old man. It's not very good. And just felt pretty depressed, to be honest with you. And I didn't
Right.
realize why. And it wasn't until I had a blood test that I found out I had a testosterone level of an 80-year-old, and
Wow.
it clicked and it made sense as to why I felt the way I did, because I did a lot of research around the subject and realized that low testosterone can cause many of these symptoms. I thought it was me that was the problem. I think many men do get this. Many guys who are listening to it probably fall into the trap of thinking, "Oh, it's just me," but they don't realize like their body. People. I think in the Western world we have a distinction between mind and body, but they're intricately linked. So if there's
100%.
something not right within your body, it's going to affect the way you feel about yourself and your life in general. So I went down that path, and I decided. Long story short, I decided to go on testosterone replacement therapy, which we can go into, obviously, and it changed my life. The positive experience of going on that led me to realize that one, there's a lack of information, solid information out there, especially from someone who's done it, to educate people, and two, just to show people that how important not only hormonal health, but how like the whole holistic areas of health, like taking your training seriously, your nutrition, and like getting regular blood work done is quite the opposite from traditional medicine. And I don't proclaim to be a doctor. It's just I'm someone who believes in a holistic view of health as opposed to throwing like pills and everything at problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Just something I want to ask you. When you said that you went to the doctor and you were feeling depressed, and did they not prescribe you antidepressants? So that's usually the route, pharmacology they're thrown at you. Was that not something that was thrown your way?
So in my case, I was quite fortunate in that I had done some background research, and I wasn't willing to accept that. Fortunately, the doctors that I saw, they were reasonably open, but they didn't know anything about testosterone and how it can affect your body. They were willing to send me down that path, but they would have had to. I think I qualified for treatment on the NHS, but the NHS the waiting list to see an endocrinologist would have been about 6 months.
Mm,
And even then, I was from the people have told me their experiences with endocrinologists who just turn them away.
yeah.
These are supposed to be specialists in hormones. I wasn't willing to take that risk, so I found a private doctor who specialized in it, and he was like, he didn't dismiss me, or tell me I was too young, or tell me it was all in my head. Took me very seriously, and he was like, as I said about in my book, he was very
Mm,
open and very. It was a two-way dialogue between me and the doctor, as opposed to the doctor knows best and telling me to fuck off, basically, which that happens a lot, and
yeah.
a lot of men tell me, I went to my doctor and he said I'm just depressed, and then they say, oh, but I know what depression feels like, and this isn't it. So most people know their own bodies if they're honest, and I think people are tired of getting fobbed off by I know doctors mean well, but they think that they have this like paternalistic attitude towards people, and it's like, I know best. But do you really? This is my body. I'm telling you what's up with it. You're just diagnosing the problem. I'm telling you what's wrong with my body. Who are you to tell me that I just need to take pills and go away? To be
Mm,
honest, I don't blame doctors, but I think they could do more in many cases to take a more of a holistic approach. But by the same token, I understand, because you're so under pressure to see however many patients per day. It's easy just to have a 5-minute slot and give someone like that, it might help them, but it's not going to fix the long-term cause. So it's quite a complex issue, but yeah, unfortunately, I didn't go down that route.
yeah, no, I did. I went down that route a good few years ago. I was suffering anxiety, depression like yourself. But as you know, with all these things, there's many ducks you need to get in a row, and throwing a pharmacological tablet at it usually throws the whole system out of whack again. It doesn't. You need to really get to the root of the problem. Is my thinking. Now, I'm not knocking antidepressants and pharmacological effects. So, where did your education begin with optimization? I know you're good pals with Jay Campbell and Paul Borges. Is that really the route you went down? And I really like those guys. I've been following them a long time too.
Yeah, both brilliant guys, very insightful. Both mentors of mine have been very fortunate, and both very good friends with both Paul and Jay. So yeah, part of it, I'm a big proponent of this. Is fine for anyone who's listening. If there's any area that you want to improve on in your life, whether it's health and fitness or anything, is finding a mentor for it. So it's a two-way relationship, and they get as much back from as you get from them. But I had the insight from their knowledge, and I've learned from Jay about hormone replacement therapy, and he was there to like really, if I had him as a friend to mentor me through the process, because even then 2 or 3 years ago when I started it, it was still very very new for most people, and I didn't have a clue what was going on, to be honest, and I was
Yeah.
scared to death. I was frightened of going on a lifelong treatment, putting a needle in my body, and he was there to like kind of like push me in a good way and be firm with me and be like, come on, you got to do this. Because I got the prescription, I put it off for like weeks, and he told me basically stop being a pussy and do it. And he said in 6 months' time you'll look back at this and laugh, and I did, and he was right, and it completely changed my life. So not only that from a friendship point of view, but from his knowledge, and then the same with Paul. Paul is, I think, in many ways has taught me to take a more holistic view of health. And I used to think, honestly, when I first started testosterone, because it completely changed my life, I used to think that everyone who's got the symptoms needed to be on testosterone. But that was a bit short-sighted of me, and I realized that it's not for everyone to go on a lifelong treatment. Yeah, it can help you, but working with Paul and having him as a mentor has taught me that you need to take a more holistic view of health. And if you can fix the underlying cause, which I talk about in my book, if you address the underlying cause, then hopefully that will mitigate the need for you to go on lifelong treatment. If you really need testosterone, then in some ways it might be necessary for you, but I think it should be a last resort.
Yeah, absolutely. The way you said that when you done testosterone, that was like when I engaged in counseling and all this stuff in my mind. I was like, everybody should do this. This is the best thing to do,
Right.
but not everybody kind of needs it. So, who is testosterone for? Who is the therapy for, and how do they know they need it? I know you cover that extensively in your books. Just give us a brief insight to that.
Absolutely. So I think that ultimately taking exogenous or pharmaceutical testosterone is only for those people who really need it. So who is someone that really needs testosterone? I think there should be some, as I say in my book, there's a few principles that I think you should stick by until to determine whether you need like a pharmaceutical testosterone. That is like, is your nutrition really good? Like, so are you eating a nutritious diet? What do I mean by a nutritious diet? Predominantly whole foods, not processed foods. So, for example, I don't know, let's say paleo or low carb diet. Do you sleep 7 to 8 hours a night? Is your body fat reasonably low? Have you got all of these lifestyle factors in order, or are you drinking regularly? So if you're drinking like a fish, you eat shit, you don't sleep very well, and your lifestyle is not very good. Let's say you smoke or you take drugs, then you don't really have any business taking testosterone until you have these things fixed and these things in order. Because even if you do take testosterone and you live life like that, it's not going to do much for you because your body is still, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So it doesn't. People think that taking testosterone, and while it is beneficial, it's not going to do. It's not a magic bullet. If you don't create the right environment for it to thrive, it's not going to do anything for you. And so I think that if you struggle with the symptoms of low testosterone, and I have seen it in many cases, and we can talk about that. Like you're a man and you've got all. Let's say your nutrition and everything is perfect, and it's all dialed in, but you have a blood test and you still have low testosterone. Then it might be wise. Obviously, you have to consult your doctor and find a competent doctor to make a decision for you. It's not for me to say. It might be wise for you to go on testosterone. And there is also another caveat. There's also this segment of people who've tried everything and still got low testosterone. And that's there's one doctor who's coined that called testosterone resistance syndrome. And we can talk about that if you like. But there's also another area of people, like I see this a lot with guys with like metabolic syndrome. They're very overweight, obese, and their testosterone is like in the gutter. And to be honest, they're in a kind of a catch-22 situation because they feel like crap and they don't have the energy to get off the couch and go to the gym and make these changes because they feel so bad. So
100%.
Someone like that probably would be a good candidate for taking it because, if they feel that bad, then, if that's going to help you make the positive changes in your life, then yes, but you shouldn't be using it as an excuse to say, oh, I'm going to take it and now I'm going to change. It doesn't have one without the other.
No, it's not the catalyst, and that's where the term optimization comes in, isn't it? As in when you're optimizing all your hormones. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, like your?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of optimization, I mean, it's a kind of a broad term, but the way I see the term is it's like optimization to me means getting all areas of your health in check. Because I think we have a tendency in our society to compartmentalize things, right? So, but for me, it consists of proper nutrition, exercise, regular exercise, ideally weight training or some form of resistance training, sleeping, and yeah, hormonal optimization. So whether, my friend Jay, he's a proponent of like thyroid medication. I don't take thyroid medication. I think for most people, taking testosterone if you need it is enough. But you can say you can optimize further. If your thyroid is not in the right place where you want it to be, then potentially could someone benefit from taking thyroid? Potentially, but I take let's say it's called a functional approach, which
And I
is
picked that up from the book actually, because I know you were talking about, estrogen levels
yeah
and taking, inhibitors and all that, and you're not a fan of that. You prefer to go down the DIM route.
yeah DIM. So DIM
Yeah.
is, for those people who are I forget the full name, demethylhydro. I
Yeah,
forget.
I'm not great with that. I just remember DIM.
Yeah.
Dim. That's kind of like me sometimes.
But DIM is a supplement that's derived from cruciferous vegetables, so like broccoli or cauliflower.
Mm.
Basically, what it helps is it doesn't reduce your estrogen levels, but it helps metabolize estrogen better. So it's going to help you process it better. And one of the reasons why a lot of guys struggle with their hormonal profile is because essentially they're not metabolizing things properly, and it's probably a liver issue, and they're probably overweight or they've got insulin resistance. So
100%.
I find some people, like I've had clients in the past where I had one client, he had really high estrogen. And I think it was mostly because he was drinking a lot of alcohol. So I told him to reduce his alcohol intake and take a DIM, and he noticed a difference in his libido
Wow.
and his overall mood. So I think with estrogen, there's a misconception about it being a female hormone, as I wrote about in my book.
Mm.
It's an important one that guys who take testosterone have to understand, because when you take testosterone, your estrogen goes up. With testosterone, your estrogen goes up at the same time. So it's important to manage it. And again, this comes back to the lifestyle thing, why it's important to reduce your body fat, because fat tissue has what's called the aromatase enzyme. And the aromatase enzyme, for anyone listening, is responsible for the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. Therefore, the more body fat you have, the more estrogen you're likely to have. So it's in your best interest to have a low level of body fat, because you're going to feel better at the end of the day. More estrogen makes you feel like a girl, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the whole the complexity of obesity. As you get heavier, your estrogen levels goes up, your testosterone goes low, you
Yep.
have no motivation, no mood, and you just get caught in this spiral.
Yep.
And then that knocks on then to our mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm a huge fan of TRT, and I'm a huge fan of Jay Campbell and yourself and all that. What do you say to people that say, "Oh, this is just an excuse to go do steroids. This is a negative connotation." And I'm going to add something to it. I won't say who it was. I talked to somebody this morning, a consultant, brain injury consultant, because I work in a brain injury in a hospital. And I said I was going to be talking to yourself, and I explained optimization. I said, TRT, and he said, "Why would you give people testosterone? That's just going to make them all aggressive." And I was like, wow, like that's just a sweeping statement that you might have picked up from some gym rats that take a lot of tests, whether it be whatever.
Yep.
That's what you're up against, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, as you read in my book, I've got an entire chapter devoted to myths about testosterone, and I back it all up with science. My book has got over 250 research citations, so it's not something I've just pulled out of the air. So in the chapter that I talk about myths about testosterone, one of them is that there's 5 myths, and one of them is that testosterone causes aggression. Now, the reason, to be honest, that people think that testosterone causes aggression is I think stems from the fact that from bodybuilding types who take massive amounts of gear of steroids,
Mm.
they do what's called stacking. So they take one drug after the other at the same time in aggressive doses, like big doses, and then it kind of ramps up their central nervous system, elevates their testosterone. But what people don't realize is it's not the testosterone really that's responsible for this kind of erratic behavior. It's more like the imbalance of other hormones caused by the testosterone. So imbalance of cortisol, imbalance of estrogen, that's predominantly affects the way they're thinking and their mood, right? So There's not the testosterone itself, it's the knock-on effect. You could argue, okay, it's testosterone, but that being said, I've got like studies in my book that of guys taking super physiological doses. So this means in excess of what you would take naturally, what the amount of testosterone you produce naturally, and they took them for several weeks, and there was no reported incidence of like increased aggression, mood, or anything like that. And this is at 600 milligrams, and a therapeutic dose is 200 milligrams. So this is 3 times the amount that's taken in a therapeutic dose. Yet these men still didn't feel like that. And to be honest, my personal experience is, I said in the book, and forgive my language, but I say if you're a dick before you took testosterone, you'll still be a dick afterwards. So all it
Yeah,
does,
definitely.
all it does is accentuate your personality, who you are. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make you any, it doesn't change your personality. Anyone who thinks that is completely misinformed and has no idea how important testosterone is for a man, and how important it is for your cognition, the way you think, your decision making. It doesn't make you aggressive or impulsive. If anything, it makes you calmer. And people who have imbalanced hormones are the people who are aggressive and make poor decisions, are impulsive and reckless. So just because I've heard this so from so many academics and doctors, but these people are absolutely clueless and have no idea about testosterone. They conflate massive steroid doses of bodybuilding stuff, and even then, it doesn't make people aggressive and whatnot. With a therapeutic dose of testosterone under the supervision of a doctor from a pharmacy, prescribed legally. So there's a world of difference between the two.
And yes, and even just as what you're saying there, and it's a good point, Daniel, the dosage and the composition of the drugs that they're taking in these gyms are from some African cave or some shithole in Afghanistan. Not even so you don't know. Maybe it says 10 mils or whatever, but the potency would be different. The toxicity, I wouldn't be trusting it. There's lots of other conflicting factors as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I wrote another chapter on my book, and this is a big problem in itself. We could do a whole topic, podcast on this in itself, but anabolic steroid abuse. I wrote a whole chapter on that in my book.
Yeah,
And
rather.
there's guys that go around buying anabolic steroids, and they think it's like from an underground lab. An underground lab is like someone's basement or someone's bathtub, and you don't know what you're getting. And then there's the guys that feel so compelled to look a certain way, so they take drugs for like 3 to 6 months, and then they come off it and they think that they're going to look a certain way. But once you take the drugs away, the effects go away. So it's a big problem in itself. But suffice to say that there's such a gulf of difference between getting regular blood work and proper therapeutic dose of testosterone, and how much it can benefit your life under the supervision of a doctor, versus just taking it, having no rhyme or reason, in a very cavalier manner in high doses, just because you want to build muscle. Two different things.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I know we talked about, diet and that. What are the causes of low test or low T?
It's a good one. I think, to be honest, the epidemic of low testosterone among people these days is it's kind of a perfect storm. So the perfect storm of poor lifestyles, where people think that sleep is optional. Sleep is probably the biggest factor that contributes to low testosterone. Chronic sleep deprivation is associated with insulin resistance and obesity and lower testosterone levels. So I think sleep is the biggest one. Poor nutrition. I think the vast majority of people, if you go walk around any shopping centre in the UK or Ireland, I'm sure you'll see people who are just the vast majority of people, sadly, are overweight and out of shape, and it's because the diet that they is crap. It's like, I don't know, sandwiches, crisps, cereal for breakfast, processed food, essentially. So most people don't eat, and I get it, it's convenience food, but it's not going to contribute to your testosterone levels. To synthesize hormones properly in your body, you need it from real food with real nutrients, and you're not going to get that from junk food. Stress levels, I think the amount of stress that we're under in modern life, even if you're living in a big urban center, maybe like Dublin or London or Manchester, you're under a lot of stress, chronic stress, even if it's low level in comparison to your grandparents, perhaps. So that chronic stress can affect your hormone levels. So I think, and then I think a lot of people just live a sedentary lifestyle. So again, it kind of circles back to the same thing: insulin resistance and obesity. If you're not moving, you're going to struggle to burn calories. Sitting at home all day watching Netflix, and just people are getting fatter. So I think those are the 4 biggest things: sedentary lifestyle, lack of nutrition, proper nutrition, diet, not sleeping enough, and chronic stress.
And then, as we said earlier, antidepressants plays a huge role in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I haven't even mentioned actually the toxicity, endocrine disruptors from our environment. So things like
Mm.
sticks,
You
plastic.
wrote a good bit on that.
Sorry.
You wrote a good bit on that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
and I think they play a huge part.
massively, and a lot of plastics behave like estrogens in the body.
Yeah, I
So
read that.
we've got there's a book on it called the estrogenization, I think it's called. And so if people want to look that one up, but essentially there's like estrogen in the water supply, estrogen when you drink a bottle of water, estrogen from any plastic whatsoever. And then you've got things even like radio waves from phones, phone signals, Wi-Fi. I even got that. I've got that in my book. That's like some researchers have called it a, a global uncontrolled experiment on human health. So there's all these things going on in our environment, plus the factors that I talked about. So it's kind of like the perfect storm. And so you have to be our grandparents. The fact is, our grandparents didn't have to worry about all of these things and take into nutrition every single aspect into account to look after their health. But we do because we're exposed to all this crap. So if you want to thrive in today's world, and it's not hard because so many people aren't thriving, then you have to take care of your health. That's just the fact, the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. How are you finding the reaction from the medical community, the Western medicine? From an Irish point of view, I went to my doctor just looking for. I've been an advocate for homeostasis levels for a long time, looking at the gene that looks after methylation, and I asked about getting these tests done, and you swear I was asking them to amputate my leg just for the crack. They're like, no, we don't do that, And then when I approached them about TRT and getting all my bloods done. Like, no, we don't do that, and that costs too much. And I was like, that's what I want, and that's what I need,
Yeah.
because I believe in this thing, and I think having you guys there is a valuable resource if you want to go down that route. How are you finding that in England?
I think England is a little bit more progressive than Ireland, perhaps. I mean, I don't have personal experience, but I've spoken to many people in Ireland before, and they've told me about the system, and I think there's limitations. The UK has a lot of limitations because we've got what the Americans would call socialized medicine, the NHS, right? So the NHS basically has this computer says no mentality, which is if it's off the standard protocol, they won't do it unless you've got a very open and knowledgeable doctor, which for the most part, I don't think a lot of doctors, as I said earlier, take this kind of paternalistic doctor knows best attitude. And I think, and I get it in a way because they think that the patient goes online and reads something about and he needs this, this, and this. I get that. But I think doctors are also doing patients a disservice by thinking that they don't know. A lot of people are very informed about their health these days and they care and they want to investigate it. And I think that traditional ways of looking at of trying to help people in the Western world is completely broken. To be honest, it's very very reactive, and there's not really any interest from doctors to be preventative. And the most forward-thinking doctors are more preventative. They say, I don't want you in my office because I want you to fix yourself and getting tests like you mentioned, like homocysteine, which is a marker of inflammation.
Mm.
Elevated levels of homocysteine is an early indicator of like stroke or heart disease. And if you catch that early on, you've got elevated levels of homocysteine, then you can take steps to address it, lower your inflammation, address the things that caused it, like thiamine or vitamin B deficiency, address your lifestyle, and then you're going to prevent yourself from getting a heart attack 20 years down the line.
And that's the route I took, and I noticed my cysteine levels were high. I changed doctors, went to another guy called Dr. Neville Wilson. What an amazing man. He's South African. He's not Irish, surprise, surprise. And he was open-minded. I told him I was on antidepressants, and I think my cysteine levels are high, and there's a few things wrong. And I went back to him with solutions to my problem. And he was like, let's give it a go. Let's test and test again. And we got them down but he was open-minded, and I was like, wow, we need more doctors like that.
Brilliant. Yeah. I think what happens with from what I understand of medical school, and again, I don't want to misconstrue it as I want to play doctor here. I don't. I sit in the middle here as trying to be an informed patient and help people inform themselves as patients or to navigate whether it's the medical system or to improve their own health. Because I think your health is your birthright and it's your right to take control of it in whatever manner that may be. I think people have, because of doctors have this authority, they've outsourced, in a way they've outsourced, and it's not doctors' fault, this is patients' fault, because they outsource their health to someone else and expect, oh, doctor, please take care of me. No, it's your responsibility to take care of your health, not the doctors. And people cry and say, "Oh, my doctor won't do me these tests." Well, go and find another doctor then.
I
Who's
think
a,
that's 100% right.
yeah,
It's kind of the white collar, the white coat syndrome. You know, people think that once you have a white coat and you know best, you know.
correct.
I question that mentality for a long time now.
Yeah, I think that what happens is they kind of like the as a doctor told me, an American doctor I interviewed for my book, Dr. Keith Nichols, he told me that doctors have been trained to think in a very black and white way. And when you go down to medical school for many years, and I can understand, like, you've got the credibility and the prestige. Who am I to say that you don't know? You know, I would never say that, but I think people have taken doctors at their word and things when there's actually another solution that you can take, and you don't have to take uh, antidepressants in your case. And you can think and you can look into it and investigate for yourself. But I think people are all too ready to say, okay, yes, doctor, that's fine. When you could actually take a bit, if you informed yourself and take control of your health and responsibility for it, then you can find a doctor who's going to open to have a two-way conversation with you and really help you investigate what the causes of your symptoms are.
100%. Great show. A brilliant quote in chapter 2: "The tide that lifts all ships." What did you mean by that when you talk about testosterone?
Yeah, so that's the metaphor I give it to testosterone is the tide that lifts all ships in the harbor. So
Yeah.
when a tide comes into the harbor, all the ships come up at the same time. And the way I see it is, if you optimize your testosterone levels, because it has such an impact on all areas of your health, whether it's cardiovascular, immune health, neurological, cognition, body fat, muscle protein synthesis, so it improves muscle mass, insulin sensitivity, because testosterone has such a dramatic effect, as that doctor you quoted before probably wouldn't know, on all areas of your health, that it's kind of like a domino effect. Now, I'm not going to say if you just take testosterone, everything's going to be all right. As I said earlier, it's like it's important to get all areas of this optimization right to really thrive with it. But I think if you're going to, as a man, especially as a man, even as a woman, it is, you know, it's important. But as a man, especially if you focus on creating the right environment, or as I call it in my book, living a testosterone-friendly lifestyle, you're going to see big improvements in the way you feel and your health in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Unbelievable. Just talking about that, people might be listening to this and, you know, they're going to pick up on, people pick things what they want, you know, and they're going to think testosterone, I'll go out and do that. What are the dangers, though, going off and doing it yourself? You know, you can find it anywhere in gyms, you know, you just, it's about anywhere in Ireland. You can pick it up. What's the
Right.
dangers of going off and doing that yourself?
Well, I think first of all, do you know what you're getting? If you're going to get it from, as we talked about before, if you're going to get it from a gym, like, do you even know? The vast majority of cases probably not going to be very good quality. So you don't even, first of all, you don't even know what you're getting. So if you take it, you don't even know what dose you're getting. So you could be taking a lot less, or you could be taking a lot more than you expect. You don't know, like, if it's contaminated with anything. Secondly, you've not been trained how to, do it yourself or inject yourself. But just watching a YouTube video doesn't necessarily qualify you to do that. And third, if you don't know anything about it, who says? And I've seen this, like, guys do this all the time. They self-medicate and then they take their own blood tests and try to interpret them. If you're not a medical expert, or if you've not got qualification in this, what are you doing that for and playing Russian roulette with your own health? It's not something to be trifled with.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. So what is the route then of restoring it? Where do people start? If somebody's listening to this show, they listen to you, where do you go other than go buy the book? I think it's an absolute gem. I think it's well worth a read, and it's not just all about testosterone, as you said in the book. It's your last stop, really. So where do people start?
Yeah, so I think to be honest, to to reiterate that what you said, my philosophy is taking control of your health as a man. That's it, and I think testosterone is central to that. And to improve your testosterone levels, really, guys, honestly, it's coming back to the basics. I think a lot of people get stuck on what supplements do I need to take, and I see nonsense all the time, like take taurine or take Tonkat Ali and all these stupid
I'm
as
just
if
looking
that's
at some of them. Yeah,
as if that's going to make up for all the crap that you eat day in day out. It's not. And people. The thing is, though, Matt, people are willing. I call it willingly delusional. They want to. They want to. They know they've got to do all this hard work to improve their diet and everything, but they'll just close their eyes and pray that spending money on a testosterone supplement will do it, even though they know in their heart of hearts it's not going to do much for them. But if someone's really serious about it, and they have, let's say, the symptoms of low testosterone, and it's not necessarily, as I say, it's not necessarily testosterone that might cause these symptoms. It could be a number of things. But let's say that you've got low energy, lack of libido, low motivation, you struggle with your to lose body fat or gain muscle, then the first port of call always is diet, always. I think a lot of people would do well, as I wrote about in my book, to reduce the amount of carbohydrates. I think a lot of people, especially in our society, they eat just too many carbohydrates. Typical Irish food. Hard
100%.
potatoes, and even and in England as well, lots of bread and stuff like that. Like the one thing that you can do that you're listening to this is reduce your carbohydrate intake. You don't need that much carbohydrates to function. And people have been deluded into thinking, like by propaganda from food companies, to believe that you need to eat a lot of carbohydrates to function. You really don't. And when I went on a ketogenic diet, and I'm not advocate of that for everyone, but I went on the ketogenic diet and it opened my eyes to the fact that shit, I really do not need that many carbohydrates to function. So I think not only the carbohydrates, but just eating a proper diet, guys, getting rid of junk food and sleeping. If you just focus on sleep and you don't even exercise, you just focus on sleep in your diet, man, that will be such a big difference. And I think the final point to mention, obviously we can't cover everything, but it's just not trying to do too much all at once. I see people try to make large scale wholesale changes in their life. And they try to do like drastically overhaul their diet, do everything 6 days a week at the gym, and then they crash and burn because it's too much. Just do a little bit and try to implement small changes and make it sustainable. That's the main thing.
Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier about the pharmacological effect on tea there. Could you just give a little insight to that,
In what regard?
How it impacts on it?
So when you take exogenous testosterone, is that what you want to know?
No. The impact of antidepressants and that kind of stuff. How is that? How do they have that effect on low T?
Oh, so when you take, so your question is like when you take testosterone, how does it improve those effects, like depressive effects and anxiety?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, testosterone is anti-anxiety, antidepressive, and it works on your neurotransmitters. So it improves like the uptake of things like dopamine and serotonin. So like if you improve your testosterone levels, whether it's exogenous testosterone or your natural testosterone levels, you're going to feel much better. That's the simple truth. Like as soon as my hormones were balanced, I went from feeling like in a depressive cloud, didn't want to get out of bed most days. I just felt like I felt like myself again. I felt like just like a normal how a normal human being should feel, energized. I used to really suffer with anxiety as well, and that was a tough one. You don't realize, for anyone listening, it's like I call it the frog in the boiling water syndrome. It's like you gradually over time you get used to feeling a certain way. You feel like low energy, depressed, your mood is bad, you're anxious, and you feel like that's supposed to be you, but that's a lot of the time it's due to like the imbalances in your body, and you don't realize how much it can affect you. And when you get your hormones balanced, it's like a light's turned on and you can see for the first time and you feel good in yourself, and that's how you're supposed to feel, not supposed to feel depressed or anxious all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. What is the benefits of getting your hormones checked, and what will they?
So I think the number one thing is it's just the benefit of getting a blood test in the first place, and not just leaving it to chance when you feel like crap, or when your last 11th hour you have to go see the doctor, and being proactive about it is just to get an idea of where your health is at. That's the number one thing, and being proactive about it. The only reason I found out about this in the first place is because I from the age of 25, I was taking a blood test once a year. So I'd already taken like 2 or 3 blood tests by that point. And this was part of my regular yearly checkup that I imposed on myself. And it's a bit of a joke, but in the NHS in England, it's like you have a regular checkup after 40. Okay, so what do you do up until 40 years old? You're supposed to wait, are you?
Yeah, that's nuts, isn't it?
Absolutely nuts. But the thing is, an island is like a socialized medicine like the UK, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, what happens is people go to their doctor and ask for a blood test, but oftentimes they'll get pushback from the doctor, and the doctor will say, if it's an NHS GP or a GP in Ireland, they'll say, oh, like you said, oh, we don't do those things. And then people will say, oh, come back and complain and say, oh, doctor won't give it me. Well, go and pay for it then. It's your health. You can get it privately and you get it very cheaply in the UK. It doesn't cost you to get a comprehensive blood test. It's not going to cost you more than £100, if that. And if you're not willing to pay that much to get a blood test, then you don't really care about your health. It's not that much money, and it's worth it. It's worth paying money to get it done and finding out what the state of your health is, because the blood test is not a be all and end all. It's only a snapshot in time, because it can change, right? Fluctuates. Your hormones can fluctuate. Your blood levels can fluctuate. But what it gives you is an insight into where your health is at, and it gives you trends. So trends to where things are going, and you can prevent them. This is why people wake up and they have a heart attack and they have a stroke, because they gradually happened over time, and it built up. It didn't just happen like that. It's because it happened over many years. And so if you identify something early on, you can take steps to fix it. But if you don't have the data to see that, like your homocysteine levels, like your glucose levels, like your fasting insulin levels, which, by the way, can tell you if you're going to become pre-diabetic or not, then you don't know. So, and I think the final point to say about blood tests is the psychological element. When I've had clients who've come to me, coaching clients, and we get a blood test done up front, they see how bad things are. It's like, I have got to do something about this. It's like seeing it stark clarity in numbers, how bad things are, forces you to take action. If you've been sat on your ass and been saying for months, like, I don't want to, I'm going to, diet starts on Monday or whatever it is, then that could be the kick up the backside that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everything starts on Monday, doesn't it? I liked in chapter 14 and 15 where you mentioned discipline, balance, and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
I like that aspect in the book, and it's such a journey. It's all, I think they're really, really important facts. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I wrote a chapter on discipline. I was actually contemplating whether to keep that chapter or not, or whether it was
I really liked it.
thank you, superfluous to the book. But I think I wrote about, I mean, there's so many books out there about discipline, right? And people who are more qualified than I am to talk about discipline, Navy SEALs and these types of people. But I think essentially, if you want to live an optimized life, so to speak, then discipline forms a core part of that. And discipline, i.e., foregoing short-term pleasures for long-term benefit, whether that be eating a good diet, whether it be exercising, going to bed at the right time. If you can implement discipline into your life, it's going to change your life so dramatically. And I think so many people are lacking just basic discipline these days. So I think it was important to emphasize that point from me, because if you don't have discipline, you can't live this lifestyle and look after your health. If you can't discipline yourself to go to the gym, if you can't discipline yourself to eat properly, and you think everything is a chore, then there's not really much of a hope for you. And I think in terms of spirituality, I think there's a big misconception in the Western world that we are just materialist beings and like everything is science. And, I think science is great, but I think it's very limited as well. And without going into like a big metaphysical or philosophical discussion, I think you will be, as a human being, it will be very short-sighted of you to deny that spiritual aspect of you. It's important to all of us, and it's important to us today as it was to our ancestors. And I think we have this idea that spirituality in the Western world is like a non-concept and it doesn't exist. And to be honest, but I think the reason we've neglected it so much is the reason why our society has gone a bit degenerate, in my opinion. I've also looked at research recently that says people who don't really have much spiritual balance in their life, there's also an association with obesity and poor health, because
Wow.
they have a spiritual vacuum. And I think people misconstrue spirituality with religion. They're two different things.
Yeah.
Being a spiritual person and being connected to yourself and in touch with yourself, or the nature, things around you, is a basic part of being a human being. Is very, very important. And if you overlook that, your health will suffer. So I think it's important for people to bear in mind wherever you want to take that, whether that means doing yoga, meditation, or even that means just breathing more often and just being aware of your breath. That's it. It doesn't have to be like a spiritual journey where you have to go to a cave in Tibet and retire. It's not like that.
Yeah, I'm just looking over your shoulder there. I see supplements there, and then I read in the book here you recommend some supplements. And just like with spirituality to one side, people look for, external stuff like supplements, the testosterone to fix all these things, when the root of the problem is generally an internal thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we have a tendency in our society to look to, they have their place to external things. So like, it's always the issue is always outside of me, whether that's I need to take a supplement or I need to go on the right diet. And yes, there is something to be said for that. I would be a hypocrite if I didn't believe in those things and advocate for them. But, I think in many ways, when it comes to those things, whether it's a supplement or whether it's a diet or a training program or whatever it is, people look at those things to fill a vacuum when all along they're missing the woods from the trees. And it's actually the internal thing they got to get right. Like people can try, this is why people go on a yo-yo diet and gain the weight back, because they didn't get their mindset right and they didn't get their mental and emotional state right. Because if you can get that balance, then you can be a bit more flexible with your diet and you're not going to get overweight. But what happens is people look to these external things as a way to as a solution, So once I get the diet, once I eat the right diet, I'll be set. And then 5 months later, the same thing happens because they haven't addressed the beliefs or, the internal things that are going on. So I think in many ways, people look in our society, this is why we have, I mean, this is a topic for itself, but this is why things like drinking or alcoholism and binge drinking is so rampant, because people try to fill a hole in themselves because they, from Monday to Friday, they're not happy with themselves. They're not, they're not in touch with themselves, and then they go and try and fill a vacuum at the weekend.
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about that in your book about mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You've done a great piece. Like, can you give us a little insight to that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm no like big mindset guru, so to speak, but I think as far as I'm concerned, good health comes from physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So you have to get all these things right, and the mental aspect is just as important as the others. And I think that particularly when it comes to health and fitness, there tends to be a focus on the physical aspect. So get your macros right, go to the gym, train, and then everything will be all right. But if you don't get the beliefs that have got you in the first place to where you are, so let's say that your beliefs have got you to being 50 pounds overweight, you're out of shape, your health is bad. What are the beliefs that led you to that in the first place? If you don't address them, like I said before, then you'll never be in the same place. You'll always be in the same place. And if you also, I get this with my clients as well. If you perceive yourself to be a certain way, so if you perceive yourself as fat and as this kind of person who's not very attractive or just not a decent person or whatever it is you think of yourself, then that's the way you're going to stay. Now, I'm not here to say that, you can magically think yourself into some celebrity or superstar and lie to yourself and say you've got like this supermodel. Of course not. But I think people would do well to change their perception and their self-talk, the way they talk to themselves. One of my clients, he said his family used to call him the fat man, right? And it was an endearing term, like it was a term of endearment, but I pointed it out to him. I said, well, the fact that they call you the fat man, what do you think that means to you subconsciously? He's like, well, yeah, I see myself as a fat person. So I'm like, yeah, well, stop letting people call yourself that, even though if they mean well, because it just reinforces it to you. So I think it's just that mental game. And again, it's not like to sit here and say you're focus on your mindset and everything will be all right. It's not like that. It's just that I think it's just that people just need to be conscious of the way they talk to themselves.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely. What is the route for people to go down if they decide from reading your book, and I hope people go and read it just from an education point of view, or if you want to explore changing your health, what's the route that they go down? They go get bloods,
Yep.
and it's well illustrated in this book. They go get them done. You can get them done in a private clinic. Where do they go from there?
So again, it really depends. I'm a big believer in getting the root cause fix, so from a functional aspect. So if you've got low testosterone, let's say from a test, as I stipulate in my book, like what the reference ranges are. But let's say that you've got a test, and let's say you've got like 9 or 10 nanomoles of total serum testosterone, which is about 250 to 300 nanograms a deciliter of total testosterone. Let's say that you've got that. I would, before jumping the gun and going onto testosterone, I would look onto ways to fix your diet, what areas of your lifestyle, what areas of nutrition can be improved. If you can do it yourself, great. If you can hire a coach like me or whoever it is to get someone a bit more objective with you and give you a bit of accountability, great as well. I would say that will be your first port of call to get those things in order. If you do have those things in order and you feel like you're not really getting anywhere, then you could potentially go out and find a GP, either your local GP if they're amenable to it, probably not if you're listening to this, or a private doctor who specializes in hormone replacement to potentially look at that. But as I stress in my book, I think it should be the very last resort when you've tried everything else.
Yeah, but see, the doctors in Ireland are not open to, if you explore the routes, and I would recommend people, if they're looking for a coach, to go to you, Daniel, or the likes of Jay Campbell for supervision or mentoring. And if you can that be obtained online, or can you get, how do they break in Ireland? Doctors are not very helpful around that kind of stuff. So what do they do?
Yeah, so I used to work for a company called Balance My Hormones,
Yeah.
and a good friend of mine, also a mentor of mine, set up the company called Michael Kosis, and they work with registered doctors, GMC registered doctors in the UK, and as far as I know, they have clients in Ireland as well who've not been able to get on the system. So I would recommend reaching out to them because I work with them, and it's a great system. Sorry, a great company rather. So, and they really are forerunners of getting around for people who want to get the treatment they want and they deserve. So that will be my number one recommendation for anyone in Ireland who's struggling with them. You can reach out to them, to Michael Kosis and the guys at Balance My Hormones.
Yeah, cool. I'll put that in the show notes. I think that's really important. It's great having you as a coach or whoever, but then to go that final step, where do they go with that? And I'm sure if anybody links in with you, you'd be able to advise them that way anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, from my point of view, it's not for me to sit here and play doctor and tell people what they should and shouldn't do. It's kind of like from a patient perspective, what I did and what I would have done. In many ways, like looking back, would I take testosterone now? Maybe, maybe not. With the knowledge I have now about nutrition and how lifestyle can improve your testosterone levels. And to be honest, I want people to avoid going on a lifelong medication if they can. Most people don't want to inject themselves or take a cream every day. But if you feel like if it's the right thing for you, it can really improve your life, and it really dramatically improved my life. So I think, as I said in my book, the overarching theme is done under the right circumstances is very beneficial. But if you think it's a magic bullet, it ain't gonna work, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. What's one of the biggest learnings you had from writing this book?
Oh, what one of many.
Give us some insights to, you know, you've been doing this a long time now, and like me, I've been reading and reading, and I love learning. So what did you learn most by writing this book?
To be honest, I learned most writing this book. It helped me to become even more of an expert on it because the amount of research I had to do for the book, it just one, it was fascinating, and two, I had to read so many studies and stuff. It just made me more of a give me more insight into the area and how lacking the information was. How lacking the information was out there. No, well, not necessarily lacking, because my friend Jay wrote a fantastic book, but I think
I've read his 3 books, by the way.
yeah, fantastic books, great.
Fantastic, yeah, and he's really good, and he's really generous with his time. He texts me sometimes on Twitter. You know, he's
Yeah,
really cool in that area.
can't say enough about the guy. He was a
Yeah,
very good friend of mine and mentor, and I would recommend anyone to read Jay's books. So yeah, I think just the information which is applicable, which is maybe break down the science in a more understandable way. And I think that was kind of one of my jobs, is to make it relatable and not too jargony. But as a lesson to writing the book, I think if anyone ever wants to write a book, is just to start writing. I mean, I didn't have it mapped out when I wrote my book. I didn't even know what the chapters were going to be, and they kind of came to me. The more I wrote, the more it came to me, and like people would say, "Oh, you must have known." But it's like Stephen King says, who's a writer, very famous writer, obviously. It's like the Great Wall of China. How was it built? One brick at a time. Same with a book. It took me a year to write, and I remember Jay telling me it took him about a year to write his first book. So it was more than anything. It wasn't the content. It was the belief that I could write it in the first place, and I had to overcome all these doubts when I first began it, and thinking, "Oh, who's going to want to read my book?" Or I'm not. Who am I to write a book? You know, it's all of these doubts that come into your head, and people think, "Oh, you're an author, so you must have had this belief." It's not true. It's like you have all of these self-doubts just as any other human being does. And so in many ways it was a journey to overcome that. But I'm very proud of it, what I put together, because I really spent a lot of time on it, putting it together. And yeah, the feedback I've got so far has been great.
yeah, and I think it's brilliant, and I promise I'm going to give it a top rating on Amazon.
Thank you.
Is it hard to get past the negativity or the ignorance of people when they just hear the word testosterone? I think shutters come up, and it's associated with gym rats and all that thing. Is it hard to get past that? Do you feel like you're defending it all the time, or is it being embraced?
I used well, like I said, when I was in that initial stages of being a big advocate of like testosterone, I used to like try and be this evangelist and say, "Oh, come on, everyone needs to do it." But now it's like I realized in life, those who are willing to listen will listen. Those who don't, they'll just stay in their own little bubble. I've created a book which any man can read and, you know, improve his life if he's willing to read it. If you don't care about it, then don't listen. You know, I don't care. If you don't want to improve your health, it's entirely up to you. I'm not going to sit here and try and preach to people and convert them. If you want to listen to my message, great. If you don't like what I say, that's cool as well. You're entitled to your opinion. I know what I've done, and I know how much it's improved my life. If you don't think that's for you, or you're skeptical because you're listening to mainstream nonsense from authorities and people who don't have a fucking clue, then that's on you. It's not on me.
And people, and I'm not really a fan of this saying of stay in your lane or whatever. That I think everyone should be able to look in all sorts. But
Agreed.
when you talk to people, generally they try to give information out. So like that doctor I was talking to earlier on, he was like, "Oh, that makes you aggressive," and he's not looking at it from a helicopter view and seeing all the different aspects of things. Straight away it was just a negative connotation, and I nearly got dragged into defending it.
Mm.
And I just asked questions. I asked why would you think that? Can you explain to me why that was? And couldn't really, So I just left her at that.
Yeah, and then they're made to look foolish because they don't know why they have the belief. And then it's funny, it's like one of my mentors said to me, it's like beliefs are like probably the biggest problems that humanity faces because people have these beliefs and they'll defend them to the hilt and they don't even know why they've got them in the first place.
Absolutely. Do you find since you've been on TRT that you've sustained less injuries? You've recovered quicker. Has it helped you in that sense?
Definitely recover quicker, 100%. I wouldn't advocate anyone going on it just for that.
No, no, no. I have an injury, so go take some tests. No.
Has it helped? I didn't. To be honest, yes, it helped. I believe that I don't have any clinical evidence for it, but I'm sure we'll have some research to back it up in recent years. And I've spoken to doctors about this as well. I'm convinced that it helped me heal my shoulder because I had really bad impingement syndrome on my shoulder, and I couldn't do bench press for 2 years, or I couldn't bench press or shoulder press for about 2 or 3 years. And now I did a lot of work to improve my posture, but I'm almost positive that testosterone helped to heal it because it's anti-inflammatory at the end of the day. So I'm positive that had a massive effect on it. Yes, I can recover more, and to be honest, I'm just, if anything, I'm smarter now the way I train. So a lot of people who are in their 30s, even 40s and 50s, I see them train like they're in their 20s, and you can't train like heavy year round and train with poor form and not expect to get injured. So it's about being smart. So again, it's the holistic thing, realizing that you don't. It comes with knowledge and expertise, right, and experience rather. It's like I've been in the gym a while, and like my friend Jay or like my friend Paul, I see guys in their 40s and 50s who are injury free and don't have any problems. So I kind of modeled what they did, and I realized like, oh, you don't have to lift heavy and beat yourself up in the gym every time you go, and you can remain injury free. And that's what I say to people is like the number one thing you want to do is avoid injury and not train like a madman because you don't have to train like a madman to make progress.
100%. Absolutely. What failures have you learned the most about when writing the book?
Failures
Yeah.
in terms of like the writing the book process or what?
Just a whole lot of it, like the book, the journey you've been on. What have you learned the most that you failed in, or you know, peaks and valleys. We always learn in our dark moments. Well, what has been your learning?
Yeah, the store is darkest before the dawn, right?
Yeah.
So when I first started the book, I wrote it for about 2 or 3 months, then I stopped for about 2 months because I didn't believe that I could do it. And then I had I had a coach at the time, and she was like, "What did she ask me?" She said, "What would happen if you don't write this book?" And I'm like, "Well, a lot of people won't get to benefit from the knowledge and the information I have." Well, she said, "Well, so you're not going to write this book because you're too stuck in your own head, and you're going to deprive all of these people of the information that you're going to write." I'm like, "Oh wow, I never thought of it like that." And that kind of it was like a light bulb moment. I thought, right, I've got to write this book because it sounds kind of cliche, but it's true. I've got to write this book to help these people because if I don't write it, then they're not going to have this information, right? So it was kind of
100%.
it was a very limiting belief that I had, and that's why I'm such a big advocate of having a coach or a mentor because they can hold up a mirror to you and show you like what your limiting beliefs are. And yeah, it was that was the biggest thing, man. It was the self-doubt, and I had so much crippling self-doubt and insecurity about my ability as an author to write this information. But you know what? That's the beauty of getting started. The more I wrote, the more I was like, yes, I really believe I can do this. And I read a book by it was Stephen Pressfield, who's a famous author of The Gates of Thermopylae, and he's written a book called Just Do the Work, and it's a book which is for entrepreneurs and creative types, authors as well. And he said you need to just do the work and ship it and not judge it. You can judge it afterwards. And again, that was like a light bulb moment for me. It was like, well, because I'm judging this work and I'm thinking, oh, it's not good enough. Or I can't do it. And you've got all this voice in your head thinking it's not good enough. And then I realized, okay, just write it and then you can judge it after. And I get feedback and I let other people decide, not me. whether my book is good enough. And I got the feedback from other people. They're like, wow, it's great, it's fantastic. And then I was like, well, I can do this now. It's hard, and it's hard to convince your mind that you can do something before you've done it. But you kind of just have to keep going regardless. And then when you got the end product there, like I've got it now, I have no doubt in my mind that I could write it. But when I first started it, I didn't think it was possible. And people have this misconception that when people achieve something, they don't see all the ups and downs. You only see the end.
Of course.
And I spent so many. I was working a job at the time when I first started writing it. I was going home and writing it, and then I went to Portugal for a month. I just stayed in a Airbnb by the seaside, and I wrote unobstructed for like 30 days. That really helped me. But then there were so many ups and downs, and like I thought I would never finish it, to be honest. And I thought, oh, why am I spending so much time writing this book? What's it actually going to get for me? But I'm very proud to have got there. So it was a massive journey of self-discovery. So if you ever want to learn about yourself, write a book.
There's two things I'm picking up on what you said there. One, I'm really appreciative of showing a vulnerability, to say that you had a self-doubt and all that, because we all have it. And if anybody thinks that going and doing TRT is going to eradicate all those problems, that is an absolute pure example of it. You can have ups and downs and still come through it. Two, it's brilliant that you had a mentor. It really makes it easier, doesn't it, for someone to hold up a mirror? I study science and nutrition and all the health, but I struggle with my own diet because I was making decisions based around my emotions. But then I handed it over to a mentor, and they were able to say to me, hold on, why are you making this decision? And that's brilliant. That's really putting your ego to the door, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Ever since I've worked with coaches, I've worked with several coaches, and I don't regret a penny. It's been expensive sometimes. Sometimes I'd be like, I didn't really have the money at the time, and I'm like, should I do this? But every time I did it, and I was glad I did it because it made such a big difference. Because to be honest, at the end of the day, you've got we were talking about all these external things, but most of the things, time in life, the things that hold you back are your just personal limiting beliefs, mental obstacles that are usually self-created, right? So if you can have someone who can help you put that mirror up and show you where you're going wrong in an objective, dispassionate way, then I think it's fantastic and it's worth every penny. And I think a lot of people balk at the idea of spending money. And I've told people I've spent this amount of money on a coach, and like, what? Why'd you spend so much money? They don't understand. Like, I'm not spending it on the coach. I'm investing in me. And when people come to me and I say, they work with me and they're like, oh, I don't know if I can. Well, I'm like, well, all right then, but this is coaching. This is what you get from it. You're investing in yourself. This is what you get. What you put in at the end of the day. And if someone can, it's very, very hard as a human being to be 100% objective with yourself. You can't be, because we're emotional beings. So
we protect ourselves. We just do. We just subconsciously just mind ourselves, and we tell ourselves lies, and we shouldn't believe some of the thoughts.
You tell yourself lies, exactly. And a coach is there to call you out on your own crap. And that's what I do with my clients in a good way. Obviously, I have a very good relationship with my clients, but I call them out on their own crap. I'm saying, why are you doing this? And I look at their MyFitnessPal for the week, and they're like, oh, I ate pretty well. And I'm like, well, you didn't actually, And so I think it's just so beneficial. It's improved my life so much. And I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't have had someone to call me out on my own crap and stop me from feeling sorry for myself, or help me out, get me out of my hole, my own created mental blocks, and help me see my own doubts and insecurities for what they were, which was nothing. It's very easy for me to sit here and say, oh, don't have self-doubt and all this. We all have them, but it's what you do in spite of them, I think.
Yeah.
That's the only way to become them.
Yeah, and I like the way your mentor switched around and said it's not about you, it's in service of others. For you to be a leader, you're doing it for others, and that's one of our greatest assets, is to be a leader in service of others.
Absolutely. I think, at the end of the day, I'm a big, big, big proponent in got to help yourself first before you help anyone else. I think there's a lot of this martyrdom in our society where you've got like completely, I see a lot of men do this, like they sacrifice their health for their family. But at the end of the day, your family isn't going to win if you're in crap health, if you give yourself away. So I think look after yourself first, and then you can only serve others when you truly looked after yourself. I wouldn't be able to serve others if my health was a shit show. So getting that right, and then you can serve others. But if you don't have that, it's like, I think Jordan Peterson says, clean your room first before you do anything else. So I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, I'm very mindful of the time. I've took up an hour of your time. What's the one thing you would like people to take away from this interview after listening to you, other than buy the book?
I would say for anyone listening, if you're going to take one thing away from this interview, it's not outsource your health to anyone else, and it's take responsibility for it. So I've heard people close to me in the past have said, "Oh, the doctor should have picked up on that. Why didn't he do that?" It's not the doctor's fault. The doctor doesn't have time to do it, or whoever's fault. It's not your mum's fault. It's not your mum's responsibility. It's not your doctor's. It's not your insurer. Your health is your responsibility. So you need to start acting like it. And I think the other thing I would say on top of that is have some urgency. You know, you don't live forever, and these things that you don't tackle today are going to be big problems tomorrow. So if you can take a preventative approach and stop these things from happening, you don't just wake up and get heart disease or diabetes. It occurs gradually over time. So if you can take a bit of urgency and stop putting things off, even if it's something, even if it's drink a bit more water, even if it's not eat cereal for the day or whatever it is, do something, but do it today.
Fantastic. And it says optimize under 35. People would think that's for people under 35. I've read it. I'm over 35. I'm well into my 40s now. But I loved it, and I think it's a fantastic book. You know, it's mind, body, and soul. It covers a lot of the supplements I take. There's probably a few I'd probably add. That's just from me personally. But yeah, it's an outstanding book, and I would recommend people to read it, you know, or buy it as a present for their fathers, their uncles. Men at any age would get benefit from it, right?
Yeah, to be honest, it was a marketing gimmick from my side. Optimizing the 35. It kind of rhymes and it's kind of catchy, but in all honesty, a man of any age will benefit from it.
100%. Absolutely. Daniel Kelly, author of Optimize 35. I really appreciate your time. It was lovely talking to you. It was such an education. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, Matt.
Thanks a lot, Daniel.